UFC 282, Blachowicz versus Ankalaev takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Saaiman versus Stephen Koslow. I'm going to be going with Saaiman. Stephen Koslow, this is not ideal circumstances for him. He steps in on very short notice. He is actually a good prospect in his own right. Same with Saaiman. A lot of people have been talking about him and when he's going to make his UFC debut. Of course, he came onto the Contender Series first, and now he's in the UFC after a good performance there. He's got a very good mentor in Dricus to Plessis, who's also on this card as well. So he's been sort of like, you know, made for this from a very young age. Like, he's been prepared for this. He's been an amateur since 2015, 7 years in MMA so far. So he's not just a regular 6-0 undefeated prospect coming into the UFC that maybe has only had like 2 years of experience. He's been doing this for a very long time from a very young age as well. I mean, he started his amateur career in 2015 and he's only 21 years of age. So that tells you how young he was when he first started doing this. And I believe in him as a prospect, and also I just don't like the circumstances for Stephen Koslow. But Koslow's good. He's got amateur experience as well. He's got the same record as Saaiman. I just think he's sort of like, he's a guy who goes right for the submission early on, tries to get it immediately. He hasn't got much experience going 3 rounds. I think Saaiman is composed enough and experienced enough to sort of withstand that early storm from Stephen Koslow. And also Stephen Koslow, stepping in on short notice, he's going to want to try and get that submission in the first round. So I can see him putting in Saaiman in some really bad situations, taking him down maybe, trying a couple of submission attempts, going for a rear naked choke, going for another submission. But then when Saaiman survives those situations, I can see it being quite bad for Koslow. So I'm going to go over 29-28 decision for Saaiman, losing the first round, escaping some bad situations, and then coming back in the second and third to win the fight. We move on. Vinicius Salvador versus Daniel da Silva. I'm going with Vinicius Salvador here. Both the same age, both young in the flyweight division, but Vinicius Salvador looked great on the Contender Series, and also he's a very rangy, long guy for the division. And one thing that I noticed in his fight is that he's very composed as well. Daniel da Silva is stupid. He's very dumb. He makes very silly decisions in fights. He had a good scrap with Victor Altamirano, but you don't have a scrap with Victor Altamirano, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to get across here. He seems to do the opposite of what he should do at all times when he's in there. He goes in there against Altamirano, gets sloppy, gets scrappy, has a moment early on, but then gets finished later on by Victor Altamirano, I believe with a big knee, I think it was. And then he takes on before that Francisco Figueiredo, who's not great by any means. But Daniel da Silva goes out there and just leaves himself in a very vulnerable position on the ground and almost gives up his leg to Francisco Figueiredo, eventually getting submitted with a heel hook. And that wasn't a very good look for him because he came in dancing around all energetic and then just immediately put himself in a very dangerous situation and got finished for it immediately into the fight. And then even against Jeff Molina as well. Has some success early on, but then gets carried away, gets hurt, gets dropped, and then gets finished afterwards. I can't see a guy get finished this much in the flyweight division over and over and over again, 3 times in a row in the UFC. And imagine that a guy who's patient and calculated like Salvador, who has got finishing potential, isn't going to finish him as well. So I'm going to go with Salvador, round 2 TKO against Daniel da Silva, and then Daniel da Silva will be cut from the UFC. We move on. Up the card to another fight, which is TJ Brown versus Erik Silva. I'm going to go with Erik Silva getting this one done. I think he's going to beat TJ Brown up. It's just about whether or not you believe Erik Silva is bottom level UFC featherweight, really. And I don't think he is. I think he's shown some good potential. He's got some good skills. I reckon he can be like a little bit of a contender. I don't think he's going to be too high up the rankings, but from so far in TJ Brown's career, what we've seen is he can beat the very bottom level guys. He'll lose to a Shahbazyan. He'll barely beat a guy like Charles Rosa. And then he'll lose to he'll barely beat a guy like Kai Kamaka, who arguably he should have lost to anyway, but that was a very close fight. So he's just one of those guys. Like, if you're the very, very bottom of the barrel, TJ Brown might be able to squeak a decision win out of you. But I think Erik Silva's a bit more than that. He's not just some shoe-in on short notice. He's an experienced guy, 9-1. a good record. He's an older guy as well, so this is going to be his only chance. And I think he's going to at least get past the TJ Brown, and I think he's going to get a decision win. So I'm trusting in Erik Silva. From what I've seen from him so far in his regional career and even on the Contender Series, he looks a little bit above bottom level trash in the UFC. So I think that's enough to beat a guy like TJ Brown. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Ovince St. Preux versus Antonio Trocoli. I'm going to go with OSP. I'm going to go with OSP here. I didn't want to, but I've been watching this Trocoli guy's career, and he is sourced up. He's on the roids. He popped on the Contender Series after finishing Kenneth Berg, who was supposed to beat him, by the way, so that was very, very impressive. But I'm not seeing many impressive performances from him. You know, he either gets a submission on someone, or he has a really lackluster decision win. I want to see some power in his hands. I was looking for his regional career, and I was thinking, where's the KO victories for a normal light heavyweight guy coming up the rankings, and there just wasn't one. So I was confused by it, you know what I mean? And he's fought lower down in other divisions as well, at welterweight and middleweight and stuff like that. And he lost to Diego Lima, who was in the UFC. You guys know of him, on the regional scene at Legacy FC. And he lost his other fight at Legacy FC as well against an 18-6 guy. He lost again on Jungle Fight against Marcelo Barboza. Like, it just seems like whenever he goes on a legit promotion, he loses. But whenever he's on Bahia Regional or Minas Gerais Regional or Full House Battle Home 9, then he can get a win over the opponent that they give him. I just think you have to be at least somewhat talented to beat a guy like OSP. And he has had some time off recently, so maybe he's made those improvements, and that's what we're going to find out. But I don't think you submit OSP. You're not going to take him down and submit him easily. OSP's got a very underrated ground game, and I think I could just see him like teeping Trocoli on the feet a couple of times, and then Trocoli just accepting defeat by decision, 29-28. I'm going with OSP by decision or KO. Moving on, up the card, Billy Quarantillo versus Alexander Hernandez. I'm going to go Billy Quarantillo, third round TKO. Alexander Hernandez, I think he's going to have a rough weight cut coming down to the featherweight division, and he's fast for a lightweight, but everyone's fast at featherweight, so I'm not going to trust him here against Billy Quarantillo. He seems to do well, Alexander Hernandez. And in hindsight, he was doing okay against Moicano, at least compared to a guy like Brad Riddell, right? But I don't like what we see in Alexander Hernandez's career. To me, I don't know about you guys, he seems like a can crusher who crumbles at the first sign of adversity in every single fight. And Quarantillo's going to give you adversity. At least you've got to admit that. You know what I mean? Even if you think, you know what, Billy Quarantillo's not the best fighter in the world, he's not going to be a champion, he's going to give everyone a bit of a tough time. And that's been the case in his career. You know, he finishes Jacob Kilburn in his debut, and he goes out there against Gavin Tucker and has a war for 3 rounds in a great scrap. Kyle Nelson, he has a great scrap with him, finishing him in the 3rd round by TKO. Has a war with Spike Carlisle as well, who's, I would say, maybe as dangerous and explosive as a guy like Alexander Hernandez, if not more, with the submission ability of Spike Carlisle as well. So I think if you can survive guys like that and give Shane Burgos a war for 3 rounds and overcome Gabriel Benitez, who's really dangerous in the 1st round as well, you're going to be able to overcome a tough 1st round against Alexander Hernandez and then bounce back later on and make him pay for it. So I'm going to go with a 3rd round TKO for Billy Quarantillo. If Hernandez wins, good, we got some new life in the featherweight division, but I'm done believing in Hernandez. He's quit on me too many times, and I'm going with Billy Quarantillo getting this one done. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Chris Curtis versus Joaquin Buckley. I'm going to be going with Chris Curtis. No, I'm going with Joaquin Buckley. I'm going with Joaquin Buckley here. I think he gets a lot of stick because he was the highlight guy and he never really lived up to that potential. But, dude, he gave Nassourdine Imavov everything he could handle in that 3rd round. He gave him problems in that 3rd round. And Chris Curtis is 35. Like, I know he's just got here and this is his chance to make money, and you know, Jack Hermansson beat him over 3 rounds very convincingly, and that was a good thing. But I feel like Chris Curtis is the counter wrestler, and if not, he's just got to try and land that one big shot like he did against Phil Hawes and Brendan Allen. I think he did a bit better than one big shot against Brendan Allen, I understand, but He did very good in that fight against Brendan Allen. But I think Joaquin Buckley is so underrated on the feet. He's very dangerous as well. He's going to be hard to find body shots on for Chris Curtis because Curtis is used to guys trying to take him down and they don't have the best of stand-up, so he can sneak body shots in on them like he did against Rodolfo Vieira. Or he's used to guys that are a bit taller than him like Phil Hawes and Brendan Allen and Jack Hermansson, and maybe then he can try and find those body shots. But I think that Joaquin Buckley is going to be too in and out for those tight hooks of Chris Curtis. And I think he's going to be very, very elusive and dangerous, throwing up head kicks, getting the guard of Curtis really high up, and then starting to stick him with some front kicks to the body and start mixing up the takedowns maybe here and there in short moments, rather than constantly going to them like Rodolfo Vieira, which becomes a little bit too predictable. So I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley here. I think he's dangerous, he's good, and 28. He's going to be making rapid improvements. He's had a bit of time off since that Paris card. Didn't take too much damage there, but he lost that fight, very convincingly. But he's beaten some good opponents, and I just don't see Curtis KOing him. I don't see him beating Buckley over 3 rounds either, so I'm going to trust in Buckley out-scrapping Curtis for at least 2 rounds of this fight. Maybe round 3 will get a little bit interesting after Buckley slows down, but does Buckley even slow down? I don't know, maybe it'll be a 30-27. I really believe in Buckley as a fighter, and I think eventually he'll get to somewhere near the top. I don't know if he's going to cut down to 170 after this, but I believe in Buckley. I think he's a good fighter. He looked great against Duraev as well and finished him off. I think he's just dangerous in all areas. And Curtis is as well, but I'm going to trust in Buckley's athleticism, his power. Curtis is sneaky, but I think Buckley's got that hunger right now to try and make a statement here. I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley, getting this one done. Decision or TKO. We move on. Up the card to another fight. Edmen Shahbazyan versus Dalcha Lungiambula. I'm going with Edmen Shahbazyan. I was going to go Dalcha Lungiambula, to be honest with you. He's a massive underdog, and I feel like he has a decent chance. But I'll trust in Shahbazyan. I'll trust in Shahbazyan, dude. He did what he did to Brad Tavares. Like, I understand he's had some rough fights, but when you look back at the people that he's lost to, you start seeing names like, Nassourdine Imavov. Jack Hermansson as well. And that was actually a pretty competitive fight where, if he had a little bit more time at the end of the second round to land some more ground and pound, maybe he could have got that fight for himself if you remember the scoring of that one. But round 3 was a 10-8, so it would have been a draw, I guess. But you're looking at these names. These aren't slouches to lose to. Derek Brunson was doing it to a lot of people, turning back the clock a lot of times back then. But yeah, just seeing that performance against Brad Tavares, if we can get a glimpse of that here against Lungiambula, I think he's going to be in luck. And I reckon he'll get this one done. I can even see him trying to offensively grapple here against Lungiambula as well, and trying to slow him down early on and eventually start to work things as the fight goes on, because he's been training at Extreme Couture, getting some work in with some really good fighters. I hear he's been training with Ankalaev this entire training camp. Putting in work with him, who's in the main event, fighting for the belt in the light heavyweight division. So he's got great sparring partners. He's moved away from his isolated gym. He's been working with Team Habib as well. I think we're going to see some new wrinkles to the game of Edmen Shahbazyan, and I reckon he can beat Dalcha Lungiambula, who again, 35, coming off a broken rib. It's just he's taken some damage, taken some losses, been KO'd, and also has a lot of similar opponents. There's a lot of guys at Extreme Couture like Ankalaev who have beaten Dalcha Lungiambula in the past. So I see Shahbazyan winning this one. Danger in the first round, but I think he'll survive it and get it done in the second or third by TKO. We're moving on. Up the card, Raul Rosas Jr. versus Jay Perrin. I'm going with Raul Rosas Jr. here over Jay Perrin. Jay Perrin's good, so I'm not going to say that Raul destroys him. I think this is going to be another decision for Raul. I don't think he's going to just run through Jay Perrin, because Jay Perrin is a formidable fighter, to be honest with you. He gave Aori Chweleng some problems. Very close fight there. He even took Mario Batistas to a reasonably close decision. But these guys are strikers that like to throw knockout blows. I think we're going to see Raul Rosas Jr. be able to secure the back in certain moments. I don't know why I'm rolling the R's so much. I don't even know if that's how you say his name, but it's fun. I think the difference here is going to be the fact that he's willing to grapple with Jay Perrin, whereas the other guys have been trying to stuff takedowns and keep it standing, and that's why Jay Perrin's had so much success against them. But I reckon Raul Rosas Jr. is going to be able to sort of like secure the back for a round, go for submissions, get a takedown and get top position for another round. Maybe have some problems in a round. Maybe he gets hurt. Maybe he goes through some adversity in the fight and loses a round. But I reckon we're going to see him be able to do enough control and enough damage from that control and submission attempts from that control to be able to sort of eke by a close 29-28 decision against Jay Perrin. We'll see. If this fight is how I think it's going to look and he ekes out a close decision, I don't see Rosas Jr. going too far after this. We'll see how it goes. We move on. Up the card, Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Chris Daukaus. I'm going to go with Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Chris Daukaus, chin ain't the best. He's not a big guy for the heavyweight division in terms of useful weight. He's got a bunch of just blubber around him. Listen, Rozenstruik's got some chub on him as well, but it's a little bit of a different kind of chub. It's that muscle man chub. And I just don't believe in Daukaus anymore, man. I've never believed in him. So I don't know why I'm saying anymore. Because I was literally saying, dude, Lewis is going to flatline this guy. Dude, Blades is going to flatline this guy. Like, I knew it was coming because I saw Daukaus' performance against Shamil Abdurakhimov. And a lot of people were saying, oh my God, he KO'd Shamil. And I was thinking to myself, he got hit so much in that fight, flush on the chin. And it was worrying to me because he really couldn't find his shots until he did. Like, eventually he did, and he found those knockdowns, and that led to him winning the fight. But until that moment, he was really, like, looking really awkward and getting a little bit frustrated, and he couldn't find his openings and couldn't find his range on Shamil Abdurakhimov, and it wasn't even like Shamil was trying takedowns on him. It was like a pure stand-up fight, and Shamil was even landing more than Daukaus at moments on the feet outside of those knockdowns and subsequent flurries. So I think if Rozenstruik lands like that on you early, you got problems. And he's got a reach advantage over you as well. So I think that's going to give problems to him. And I think Rozenstruik's going to put him in a spliff. So I think Rozenstruik KOs him in the first round, puts him down. And yeah, talk about a lack of hype in your build-up to your fight. You just saw your brother lose to Erik Hernandez, of all people, by TKO and got dominated the whole fight pretty much. And now you got to try and sort of suck it up and go out there and win in your fight against Rozenstruik. I don't see it happening. I think he's going to lose this one by KO and go back to working for the feds, yo. Moving on to the main event. The main card, sorry. Bryce Mitchell versus Ilia Topuria. I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria over Bryce Mitchell. I think Bryce Mitchell's very good. Very, very good. He's had a long training camp as well. Ilia Topuria still had some time. If he was filling in for that November fight card, I was kind of thinking, you know what? If he takes this 5-rounder against Mitchell, I can see Mitchell taking advantage that he took this fight on short notice and sort of drowning him in those later rounds. But I think an in-shape, peak Ilia Topuria, ready for a fight, had a training camp. I think he's going to be able to beat Bryce Mitchell by TKO. And I think he's going to do it pretty early to the body as well. Bryce Mitchell is... I'm sorry, Bryce. I know you watch my videos. Bryce Mitchell, one of the first guys in the UFC to watch my videos. Respect to him. He did a little bit of a vlog once where he had my video up on his screen back when I had like 10k subs. So I respect that. And I picked him to win every single fight of his career. I have picked him to win every single fight of his career so far because I've believed in him. But this one's tough. This one's real tough for him. And I know he dropped Barboza, but I just think Ilia Topuria, I saw him scramble against Yusuf Salau on very short notice. He's dangerous and he's got submission attempts of his own. And he's not a guy who just accepts being on bottom. He constantly works his way into a better position in fights. And we could see Mitchell be able to ragdoll him. I'm rooting for Mitchell just because I think he's a fun personality to have. But I think Ilia Topuria is that guy in the featherweight division. So I'm hoping Bryce Mitchell proves me wrong. I really am. But I think Ilia Topuria is going to land them body shots on him. I can see Mitchell trying to get him down at one moment. Ilia Topuria stuffing it. Mitchell trying to get a hold of the clinch or trying to get a hold of Topuria. And while he's trying to grab a hold, Topuria ripping them short little T-Rex arms to the body of Bryce Mitchell. I just think his boxing's too clean. And he's a hammer. Like, he's not going to be the defensive Edson Barboza, please don't take me down, please don't take me down at range. He's going to be pushing Mitchell backwards and hoping that he tries to take him down. You know what I mean? He's got that mentality that you need to beat a wrestler. So I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria getting this one done by TKO at the end of the first round with body shots. I really do believe he's got this one in the bag. So I'm believing in Ilia Topuria. Plus, he's very young, still new to his game. I think there's more chance he'll have improved since his last fight than Bryce Mitchell. So I'm going with Ilia Topuria getting this one done. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Darren Till versus Dricus du Plessis. I'm going with Dricus du Plessis over Darren Till. I can't believe in Darren Till anymore. I can't do it anymore, guys. I tried. I picked him against that guy, this guy, that guy, this guy. I can't do it anymore, man. And I told you guys, I said, listen, I'm looking for a picture of Darren Till in the build-up to this fight, looking shredded out of his mind on Instagram to show me that he's in good shape. Do I see a very, very, very faint outline of some abs with the perfect top-down lighting? Maybe. But it just looks soft muscle. It doesn't look like he's ready for this. Like, he looks in shape. Like, I've no doubt he's ready for the fight and he's in good form. But I'm just watching his chest jiggle around and little flab belly hanging over. I think he's lost a bit of testosterone. I don't know what happened to him. I hope he wins. I'm really hoping he wins. And if he does win, I'll be cheering and screaming and really happy about it. But I think Dricus du Plessis, and we'll get to the technique in a second, is just a different man to Darren Till. He probably is on something, in all honesty. He's built different to Darren Till. He's a real athlete. He's taken his career seriously. He's also young, 28 years of age. Younger than Darren Till in this case as well. And he's got experience. You know, he was at EFC fighting for belts. KSW fighting for belts. He had 2 fights with Roberto Soldic. They're 1-1. Roberto Soldic, one of the most hyped up prospects outside of the UFC and major promotions over the past 10 years, I feel like. So I'm going with Dricus du Plessis here. I believe in him. He's had big fights before. This isn't like his first big fight. He's fought for belts, 17-2. I think he's going to catch Darren Till, make Darren Till a little bit cautious on the feet, and then start mixing in some takedowns in round 2 or 3. And I think eventually he'll get like a mounted guillotine or a rear naked choke, or just finish Darren Till with ground and pound by TKO. So I think Till will be doing good early on. Du Plessis will be rushing forward. But I think with Du Plessis, when he swings with such long arms for a 6-foot guy, when he swings rushing forward like that, with his long range and dangerous knockout power, I think Till's going to be forced to start bringing his hands up as he goes back. And I think eventually, if Till starts out landing him or starts out striking him early on, I think Du Plessis is going to start blitzing forward, getting Till to counter, or if Till's like worried about the power, cover up a little bit. And then once he swings 2, immediate double leg, get his hands together, pick up Till, dunk him on the ground. It just seems like Till's only method of getting back up off of his, getting back up after he gets taken down or stopping the takedown in general is if he can get that underhook. And I think the power and weird striking and pressure of Du Plessis is going to make Till worry about that and keep his hands up, not letting him get that underhook to defend. So I think this is a good matchup for Darren Till. I think he's going to be winning the fight for a while. In terms of finishing ability, I'm going with Du Plessis. And people say, why are you saying grappling? Why are you saying grappling for Du Plessis? You're so stupid. Why are you saying grappling? And I've seen that on a lot of comment videos that I've been, videos that I've been breaking down this fight on. I know Dricus du Plessis strikes in fights, but he literally has the ability to ragdoll people to the ground and submit them easily. He tried to get down Tavares. In round 1, it failed, and he ended up on bottom. Fair enough. Tavares has some of the best takedown defense in the UFC. Trevin Giles, he tried to take him down, or Giles went for him, and then he reversed it, swept it, ended up on top, trying to go for a submission there, but Trevin Giles barely escaped. He also has a submission over Brendan Lazar on the regional scene, another submission over Yannick Bahati as well, who's a beast of a man at EFC, very muscled up guy. He was able to manipulate him around and submit him. Another guillotine choke against a 7-2 guy, another guillotine choke against a 15-8 guy, rear naked in his early career, another rear naked, another rear naked, another rear naked, another rear naked. Like 5 rear naked chokes out of his first 7 fights. Crazy. So, yeah, I believe in Dricus du Plessis. We move up the card to another fight, which is Robbie Lawler versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. I'm going to be going with Santiago Ponzinibbio over Robbie Lawler. I don't believe in Robbie Lawler here. Robbie Lawler, why is this even a fight, though? Like, really, why is this even a fight? You lose to Bryan Barberena. Here's Santiago Ponzinibbio. Not only do you lose to Bryan Barberena, but you get KO'd by him. And hurt badly. Recently. And then you're right back in there against Ponzinibbio. I don't know what the UFC matchmakers are doing. Give me a Matt Brown, Robbie Lawler rematch. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm looking for Lawler's career. I ain't looking for this. It's annoying me, man. These matchups that they're making with some of these old-timers. Lawler's going to get his face jabbed off in this fight. I really do believe that. Ponzinibbio's going to jab his mush off. There's a difference between losing to Barberena by TKO in the second round and arguably beating Mikel Pereira. You know what I mean? And a new version of Mikel Pereira that's taking his career seriously. Having a very close fight with Jeff Neal and outlanding him on significant strikes across the fight and nearly winning that one as well. You know what I mean? Like beating up and coming Miguel Beza at the time. Like, I do believe that Santiago Ponzinibbio knows what he's got himself here. And if he commits himself to this fight and takes it seriously, this is a win in the bag for Santiago Ponzinibbio. I just don't think Lawler's got it anymore. 40 years of age. Looking slow in his last few fights. He looked a little bit switched on early with Bryan Barberena, but it's Bryan Barberena. He's not good. He's not athletic. He's not technical. That was, if anything, an ideal matchup for Robbie Lawler. And he couldn't get it done against him. This is a bad matchup for Lawler. A guy who's not going to engage in a scrap. Who's not going to trade hooks back and forth with him. Who's going to stick at range and pop his jab and follow up with the 2 now and again. I reckon we got Santiago Ponzinibbio TKO in round 2 or 3 here in a vintage Ponzinibbio performance. We move on. Up the card, Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon. I'm going to go with Paddy Pimblett here. And I'm going to go with Paddy Pimblett by rear naked choke. I think he'll hurt Gordon on the feet at one moment and then eventually latch up the rear naked choke on a scramble after Gordon goes down. Like, maybe he hurts Gordon with like a big few shots. Gordon goes down, tries to reach for a single leg, and Pimblett circles round, takes the back, sinks in the rear naked choke. That's what I believe is going to happen. But I think Gordon's going to be winning the fight until that happens. I think that's going to be a fact. I think Gordon's going to be pushing him up against the cage, kneeing the thigh of Paddy Pimblett, avoiding being hip-tossed. The sort of game plan that Jordan Levitt was going for, but trying to be a little bit more successful at it. Trying to rip the body of Paddy Pimblett against the cage. But with Jared Gordon, I'm just noticing with his hands at times, if you're fast and athletic and you have some pop in your shots, you can catch him. You know? You can catch him. You can catch Jared Gordon on the chin. And Pimblett, although he's not the best on the feet, he's fast, athletic, powerful, weirdly quick on the counter. And he looked really good against Luigi Vendramini. I know he didn't look great on the feet against Jordan Levitt, but I think he was just so used to stuffing that takedown for the entirety of the first round in that fight. But against Luigi Vendramini, he seemed a lot better on the feet, you know. Teeps to the body, leg kicks at range, question mark kick up high as well. I think that's the stuff that's going to sort of keep Jared Gordon on the back foot, not let him pressure too much with those teeps to the body. And eventually, I think Gordon's going to make a mistake and get caught. And Pimblett's going to latch up that rear naked choke. I think this is a tough fight for Pimblett. I think Gordon's a very good underdog. I don't think Pimblett should be the favourite that he is. I think he's like a 2.5 to 1 favourite. I think he should be not even a 2 to 1 favourite. I think he should be like minus 180, minus 170 over Jared Gordon. I think this is a very close fight. I just think Pimblett's got that finishing ability. And also he thrives under the pressure. And Gordon's a quiet guy. 34 years of age, never been in a spotlight really, always been on the prelims, always been on this card that doesn't really get much attention, or the Apex cards recently as well. I just think he's going to be a little bit overwhelmed here. You know what I mean? Co-main event of a pay-per-view out of nowhere. Everyone's booing him in his own country, walking out. It's like there's a lot that goes into it with Pimblett. And I think until Pimblett fights someone who's experienced that level of fight, it's going to be hard to expose him. You know what I mean? I think a ranked opponent will expose Pimblett, and they're going to beat him. But I think Jared Gordon's not the guy to do it. He just doesn't really seem great anywhere. And Pimblett's great at finishing fights. And he can catch you and change the tide of the fight. Yeah, I reckon Pimblett gets it done. I think he finishes him. I'll do a more in-depth breakdown of this closer to the fight, but I reckon he takes the back and chokes out Jared Gordon. We move on up the card to the main event, which is Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev. I'm going to be going with Magomed Ankalaev winning this one. Options win fights. I think Jan Blachowicz is going to give him some problems on the feet, but I think there's like a... Adesanya was eager to get going against Jan Blachowicz. Rakic was the same as well. I don't think Ankalaev is going to be that eager to make this a fun fight early on. You know, Adesanya was really trying to pop and feint and throw a lot of kicks at Blachowicz, and Blachowicz was able to just sort of like constantly react and constantly check the kicks. Same situation with Rakic as well. I just think Ankalaev's going to be very patient at range, not kick the legs too much, go for like front kicks to the body, try and mix up some front kicks to the head, pop a jab out there and move. I just think he's going to do different things that Jan Blachowicz isn't going to be ideal to deal with. But Jan Blachowicz is going to have some success early. I just think eventually Ankalaev will catch one of those body kicks. It might hurt him, but he'll catch one of those body kicks and he'll take down Jan Blachowicz. There's no... And I see him training with Shahbazyan and he's drilling takedowns on Shahbazyan and stuff like that. I think he's going to see Rakic take down Blachowicz in the second round of their fight. He's going to see what Glover was able to do to Jan Blachowicz once it hit the ground. But I think Ankalaev has enough threat on the feet early on to make it a bit more of an easy transition to getting that takedown. So I'm going to trust in Magomed Ankalaev. Jan Blachowicz has got a really good chance of winning this. I don't think you should count him out, and not a lot of people are, because some people are picking him to win this one. But you've got to go with Ankalaev. Young, up-and-comer, had his experience over 5 rounds against Thiago Santos, made short work of Anthony Smith. I know Smith got injured, but he wasn't doing too well before that anyway. And, yeah, I think I've got Ankalaev winning this one. He can mix in the takedowns. He's going to mix in the takedowns. And I just think he'll drain Jan Blachowicz as the fight goes on. He's very smart with how much he puts out there in terms of his energy efficiency and stuff like that. So I trusted Ankalaev. He took down Krylov 3 times and won the control battle as the fight went on against Krylov. And that's a new Krylov as well, like a coming closer to his prime Krylov. So I think he's going to give Jan Blachowicz problems. And once he gets that takedown in rounds 1 or 2, then we're going to see Blachowicz a little bit more hesitant on the feet, like he was against Corey Anderson. I know he KO'd Corey Anderson, but still, he wasn't doing him like he did Dominic Reyes or other opponents like that. We're going to see him a bit more hesitant, not knowing what to react to, and that's where we're going to see Ankalaev start to pick it up. And I reckon Ankalaev is going to get a decision win, 49-46. Maybe he loses the first round, but gets the takedown in the second, and that's going to really like be the end of Jan Blachowicz mentally for rounds 3, 4, and 5 on the feet and on the ground. So I'm going with Ankalaev, snooze fest decision, Dagestani.